How on earth do you differentiate your practice in a sea of competitors when what you do is 100% intangible? Well, my guest today faces that. He happens to be a therapist, but this applies to anybody whose practice is built on intangible services. And we're going to work through this very question. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency. And I'm also the host of Practice Care, but the mission for both is the same. And that's to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that what they want, but I really believe that care is better when it's just you and your provider sitting at the table, figuring out what's best for you. And nobody else is secretly whispering in the provider's ear what their agenda is. Not a hospital, not a health system, not owners in faraway places or faraway lands, just you and your provider. And my guest today is Curran Otis. Curran owns Tranquil Waters Consulting, which focuses on helping individuals overcome trauma, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Tranquil Waters is based in Arlington, Washington, which, according to Curran, is the lesser known Arlington in the United States. Curran has always dreamed of owning his own business and jumped in fresh out of graduate school in 2018, but we're going to hear he'd been thinking about it longer than that. And today, Curran acknowledges that he wears many hats in addition to owner, and they include marketing, sales, and clinic director. And that's the order that he put them on his website. So notice he's got the business side on par, or even ahead of the clinical side. And to round it out, he's married with a 3-year-old, and he's a youngin'. He just turned 37. Curran, thanks for coming on Practice Care.
Carl, thank you for having me this morning. It's great to be here. I'm excited. It's early here on the West Coast, but it is a good morning.
Yeah, and you don't sound like you just woke up, so that's great. So I give a brief background on you. I was hoping just to help our listeners get to know you a bit better. If you could fill in some of your background, and then in your bio on your website, you had even said you'd been interested in getting into therapy since college, so even before graduate school. So I'm curious about that. Most people coming out of college, plenty do, but most don't know what the hell they want to do once they graduate. So
Yes.
Help us just kind of round out the background on you.
Yeah, Carl, we'll begin back in the storied age of 2005 when I started my freshman year in community college. I always loved doing public speaking. Always have been a public speaker. Speech was my favorite class in high school. So loved the idea of being able to share some of the challenges that I've experienced in my life and be able to use that background to help others and be able to let them know, regardless of whatever challenges you face in life, you have the choice to decide how you respond to those, how you're going to overcome that. So speech and speaking to others and sharing my experience led me to having an idea early on in college of I wanted to be a motivational speaker. This was before the era of TED Talks. So had no awareness that would be the direction I'd be interested in at the time. Wanted to do something similar.
Okay.
So, however, this is where the story goes towards psychology, goes towards finding the track that has led me to where I am today with Tranquil Waters Counseling. So my first speech class, Intro to Speech Communication, the professor, my freshman year, required us to record our speeches that we did. And
it's painful to hear yourself, isn't it? It's necessary, but it's painful.
It's painful to hear yourself. It's more painful to watch yourself.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Okay.
And self-critique yourself is even more painful.
Oh, yeah.
So during this semester, there were many moments where it was like, oh my goodness, if this is what I'm doing in front of a crowd, public speaking is not for me.
Okay.
Getting nervous, rocking back and forth, those kinds of things. Freshman year things they don't tell you about.
Right.
So another class I took, Intro to Psychology. The professor was vivacious, dynamic, all of that. Very on point. Dug into this is what it looks like to get in and understand the core of what makes someone who they are. I was hooked.
And there it is.
And there it is.
All right. So now way back when you've got this idea of I want to get deeper into the core of who people are, help them figure out who they are, what's going on in the areas that you ended up choosing to specialize in.
Yes.
So you've got the I know what I want to do, and then sometime between then and before you opened was, wow, there's a lot of other people who do this too.
Hmm.
So why would anybody choose me? And you say that on your website pretty high up. Like it's
Yes.
not an afterthought. There's a bit about if you have an emergency, call 911, and then it's on to Tranquil Waters and you even say, why choose me? And
Hmm.
there's a paragraph in there. Um, what made you even figure out that you needed to do this or even focus on finding a competitive difference? Because it's not in the natural instinct of, I'll say, many healthcare practitioners out there. In some spaces, it is. In some spaces, many parts of the healthcare sort of private practice world, it's not. So what made you realize, you needed to do this?
Hmm. Yeah. So why choose me is at the top of my website because I operate out of it's an up and coming trend within therapy called modern therapy.
Okay.
Modern therapy is out of the humanistic movement that talks about clients that are coming to see us as therapists are coming to us with an understanding that there's something they are looking to correct, they're looking uh, to fix, to move on to a different direction in their life. However, they're stuck.
Okay.
How so? Modern therapy moves away from that mindset that the therapist is in control
Hmm.
because the what I tell many of the clients that I see is that I'm not the expert on your life. You are. You've lived your experiences. You've lived those moments that keep you up at night. You've lived those moments that you wouldn't want to share with anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You're coming to me with tools, and I tell a lot of the individuals I see to embrace this because I've worked through my mental health journey as well with many different metaphors, and my mind works in pictures, always has.
Okay.
So I tell a lot of the individuals, you're coming to me and you're trying to put a nail into the wall, but you're using a screwdriver.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you can get that nail in. You're gonna have to pound it pretty hard. It's gonna work, but you're gonna be exhausted at the end.
Okay.
So my role and why I say why choose me is I might be able to look at that and say, I see you're using that screwdriver. I can provide you with a hammer. It's going to be easier. I'll teach you how to use it if you've never
Okay.
used one before. And being able to meet individuals where they are, because the first thing they need to know is that you get it, that you understand where they're coming from, what hurts, what is that hang up, what is that worry that they have,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to know for one moment, even if it's a second, that someone understands.
So when you say, I'll say that the traditional model, I guess, for lack of a better word, is that the therapist is in control. Are you saying that you're more of like a facilitator or like a guide, or how would you characterize the difference between your approach and what you just described?
So, my approach is the therapist is the mentor to their process. The
Okay.
therapist is there to give them that insight because
Okay.
as therapists, we all are trained at understanding that deeper level. I would boil it down to it's that I know something you don't know.
Okay. And doesn't the traditional therapist think the same? They know it as well.
I would say the traditional therapist knows the client. However, it's being able to come into it. And my approach, I developed my practice around the idea of coming into a space that would be where you could confide in someone who is similar to your closest trusted friend.
Okay.
So it's more of a living room style practice.
Okay.
So,
So, okay. No, keep going.
yes. So I was going to say it imbues that sense of warmness. My name, Tranquil Waters Counseling.
Hmm.
I'm a child of the ocean, love going to the beach, always have since very young. You think of you can't it's very challenging to go to those places where there is stillness within water and have a sense of anxiety. You have the sense of I'm going to, unless you don't enjoy swimming. We'll acknowledge those people.
Yes.
If you have those phobias of swimming, come see me. We'll work on
Okay.
it.
So is the difference then the why choose you? It's mentor versus taskmaster. How would you
I,
what would you say there?
why choose me is you have other options. I'm not
Hmm.
saying I'm the best. I'm saying I will understand you. I will listen to you. I will see you. I will affirm you. I will encourage you. And I will educate you.
Correct. Yes. And they haven't, and you're not, that's no one approach to anything is really for everybody, that is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to say, so your difference is you say your mentor, your approach is to be a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's the word you would apply then to the more traditional? That's where I was going with my previous
Yes.
question.
So I will not vilify the traditional model. I think because without the traditional model, we would not have the foundation for counseling that we do.
Hmm.
We would not have the understanding into the soul and the understanding into
Right.
how to meet people where they are. We would not have the models of Carl Rogers. We would not have the models of Albert Bandura. We would not have that core that allows us to be who we are as therapists. However, I would say it's important to give it to life experience. That's where I see that change. It's more come into my practice, tell me what you've been through. Let's see how we can fill in those gaps.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to get you to say give
Mm-hmm.
a negative or a pejorative
Mm-hmm.
word to the traditional model, because there are people out there who thrive in a mentorship environment, and there are
Mm-hmm.
those who say no, it's not how I do well.
Right.
It's just not for me. I need to be told what to do. I
Yes.
just tell me what to do,
Yes.
so I can move on with my life. That's all I was going for. So if you had to
Yes.
kind of say, all right, you're the mentor
Mm-hmm.
approach.
Yeah.
A more traditional therapist is more of I don't know, a teacher approach. I don't know what the
Mm-hmm.
word would be, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Um,
Yes, and I would say so as well. I believe that there are have in my 4 years of practice, there have been individuals that come in and say, I don't want that mentor role. I want you to tell me what I need to do.
yeah.
And it's important to work from that mindset of having both your go-to foundation,
Hmm.
being able to have that approach of saying, the reason why it's important to say, why are you going to pick me as your therapist? Because there's, yes, Arlington is a smaller community. It doesn't negate that Washington State has many different individuals, and telehealth throughout
Hmm.
the COVID pandemic has been a massive
True.
uptick. So
Yeah.
why me is, why wouldn't you go to someone who will allow you to do service where you're sitting at home, or which I do telehealth. However, there's something different about that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah. You would
Yeah.
think you get the whole
Yeah.
body language, you get everything. There's no
Yeah,
distractions
right.
in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, there are no therapy emojis yet. I'm sure they're
Hmm.
being worked on somewhere that will help with telehealth. However,
By the end of the week.
right, right. By the end of this podcast, I'm sure that will be going. So
Right.
thank you for that.
Right. We started a movement within the
Right,
movement.
exactly.
So did you kind of discover this difference because of um, the way that you wanted to deliver therapy from the beginning, and you realized it was different? And so your task then is to articulate that difference, because
Mhm,
in the nature of the delivery of the clinical service, it's
mhm,
different. How you conduct treatment with a patient is different than how the teacher model that we just threw that word out there to help people understand is
mhm.
different. Or did you are they really kind of similar, and you said, look, I have to call out a difference or else nobody's going to be able to tell me apart? How did it go for you?
Yes. So for me, my first year of practice was uh, very interesting because against the suggestion of many individuals outright out of grad school, the traditional theme that I got was go into agency work, get your feet wet, do
Mm.
that for a couple years, then jump into private practice. I said, nope, I'm
Hmm.
jumping in head first. I'll figure this out. I have an idea of how business works because my parents and my grandparents were both entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So I was like, well, if this works and I know how to do this, I can build things up in a way that will allow me to move in that way. So
Got it.
my first year in practice was seeking out different individuals within the therapy world that have built that understanding of how do you work through that process of reaching out to clients, connecting with them. Uh, Laura Long at your Badass Therapy practice, shout out to her.
Okay.
She is the one that taught me a lot of how do you approach clients? How do you meet them where they are? How do you write to their heart?
Mm-hmm.
And you go to Psychology Today, take 25, read down what's the first thing that you read. Three things. This is what I do. This is where I am. This is where I went to school.
Not terribly differentiating.
Not to, okay, that's great. I'm glad that I'm glad that you know what you do. I'm glad you know where you are. I'm
Yeah.
glad that you got educated. That's great. When a client comes to you and wants to know what's different than those other 24 profiles that I just read,
Yeah.
and how do I pick who I'm going to call?
Mm-hmm. What did you discover? Because I have an
What
answer to that, but what did you discover?
Yes,
Yeah.
what I discovered is okay, if I place myself into the client's shoes and say if I need counseling and I'm looking for someone and I need to know that they're going to get it, because the one thing I hear is, well, I've been to five other therapists. I didn't feel like I connected with them. And why are you different?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There it is. There it is. And yeah. So, I mean, my answer was going to be, one, you have to have your difference, and two, you have to say it right away. I
Hmm.
mean, the how many years in practice, where you went to school, and where you're located is necessary information. But
Hmm.
when somebody's hunting around for a therapist or anybody to solve the problem that they have, the first thing they want is, they don't care about you yet, Curran or
Hmm.
Carl or
No,
any of these other
no,
24. They
no.
care about their problem. And the first impression you got to strive to make is, um, by saying what we're saying right up front, we are showing that we grasp your problem.
Yeah.
So keep reading, keep checking
Hmm.
us out.
Hmm.
That's now what that core difference is, what that point of differentiation is for you. It's you're the mentor. That's what
Hmm.
you strive to be. And
Yep.
then for others, it's whatever differentiates them in their space. Um,
Yes.
so you discovering the difference. I'm a mentor. That's how
Hmm.
I'm. That's the difference I want to be. Um, that was a combination of what's going to be different and valuable, along with, it sounds like a nice combination with how you're kind of wired to practice anyway. Is that
Hmm.
fair?
Yes.
Okay. So there's another lesson, is that part of your differentiation has got to be something that I'll say you can sell. And the best way to sell it authentically is if you're really wired to think and feel that way. And no matter
Yes.
what you do, whether you're in therapy like Curran is, or in any other in any other business or practice. Um, I'm curious. So now you've got this point of differentiation out there, the mentor approach. When did you think you really had something? Like maybe you talked to a couple of potential patients and they went, "Oh, that sounds fantastic." Or what was the, when you felt like, I think I really have it here. It's either, and it could be, I've got the point of difference, or I'm able to. Sometimes the harder part is I know what's different about me, but I'm just struggling on how to say it in a way that anybody else can understand. So
Hmm.
for you, what was the point where you thought this really matters? Like I really have something here.
The point that I would go back to, and the moment that I was able to work with my first client, and this was during my clinical internship, and I will always hold this very, it is my candlelight moment. And what I
Okay.
mean by that is it shines very brightly. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I had a client I worked with because in my clinical internship, I worked in Seattle Public Schools, working with individuals that were middle school, high school, and elementary as well. And I had one individual who had had a parent who passed away. Worked with him for 10 months. It was my first client, long story short, that I was able to graduate completely. And I use that term when I discontinue clients because of their success.
Right.
I Everybody knows what it's like to have that pride in graduating.
Mm-hmm.
So for the majority.
Okay.
So I would say that those individuals who I've been able to refine what I do, how I approach, what I'm focusing on, and be able to get to that point where they say, I no longer need the help that you're providing. I can do this on my own with the skills that I've received.
Right. Right. Excellent.
Those are the moments in private practice that I believe help us as therapists know what we are doing works.
Mm-hmm.
If it works, continue to polish it, make sure it's continuing to work, make sure it has a good shine so those
Right.
other people are able to, because you get to the point where the number one way people say, well, something's different about you. What did you do?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, oh, well, I went to counseling. Oh, you went to counseling. Opens a conversation about why is counseling important, and if it works for you, it must work for me.
Right. Right. And then they're off the same journey of, all right, now who do I pick?
Yes.
And when they get to, your website and
Hmm.
start learning about you, what they're going to see is, all right, this guy does it differently. He talks about a mentor approach rather than the approach everyone else has.
Hmm.
So, and there's something else in there with the, the differentiation is 100% intertwined with who you're trying to serve. So you said earlier, you said it in passing, you get some of your patients are those who have tried one or two or three others, and it just didn't get anywhere. And now with you, they're getting somewhere. And
Hmm.
so, you know, with the long held belief, actually not belief, it's true that nothing's for everybody. Um, the target market that you're trying to serve is also really important. So we say a core, we're talking in this episode about how do you differentiate yourself? It begs the question, which we're not going to get into today, but just because
No.
it's people will get it, but for who? Differentiate for who? Maybe, and Curran, this I'll just say this: we don't,
Yes.
but
Yep.
maybe your practice is going to grow into one where, or maybe it already has, where I'm the best for those who have tried the others and it just didn't work, or I'm the best for those who discover that they know enough about themselves that they want to be guided and not told, which is more of a mentor versus a teacher. Again, I'm throwing teacher like we talked about it forever. We
Right.
haven't.
Right.
I just came up with that on this episode. So, so, but there it is. So as you're thinking about differentiating your 100% intangible service, you have to keep thinking about for who. And sometimes you're going to go back and forth on it.
Mhm.
But nevertheless, one fits the other. So, uh, couple of wrap up questions.
Mhm.
I'm curious, do you keep looking at making your differentiation, not your differentiation better, but how you say it better? Or do you just feel like you found it?
I think it's continuing to look at the ebbs and flows. There is no static approach
Mm-hmm.
because people continue to change.
Yeah.
And since people continue to change as therapists, it's important that we choose to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
And with that insight that we all have, it's important to use that insight with our practice to be able to say, the next person that walks in, what is that impression that I want them to go home with?
Mm-hmm.
And what will get them from that intake to that next session? Or what will get them, even more so, what will get them from a consultation to an intake?
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know as private practice owners, those intakes are important to determine how long and how frequent and how often that individual is going to come in.
Yeah. And do you go through, so here's what to expect here at Tranquil Waters?
Mhm.
Because if it's not going to work for them, seems like, the sooner they find out, boy, this isn't going to work and they leave, you
Mhm.
don't want that to happen, but it should if they don't think they're a good fit, better than 3 or 4 sessions in
Right.
and all the time investment for everybody.
Yep.
So yeah, so it's important to get that out too. Excellent, Curran, and I say this with every guest. Man, we could go on for hours because we're just but the point of practice care is more on the bite-sized
Yes.
size of advice. And so a couple of wrap up questions. The first one is, now that you've heard the questions that I've asked and the conversation that we've had, is there anything you think I should have asked you but just didn't think to? And you could say, no, we covered it all, or well, there's one other thing, whatever you think.
The final advice that I would give and the final insight that I would like to leave with our listeners today would be continue to serve those individuals that you get to treat, because although private practice is individual to who we are as owners, we're all in this together to change the landscape and to change the message of talking about mental health in our country.
Mm-hmm. So keep
So
going.
yeah,
Yes.
keep up the good fight.
Got it. Perfect. And then the final question I've got, and I want to give an answer to, is so if we take a step back, there's somebody listening to this who says, they really caught my attention. My services are intangible, or I don't think anybody can, it just doesn't seem like anybody knows what's different about me. Are there 1 or 2 tangible steps that listener could take if they're facing that? And I think I want to give the first one is, Curran got his difference down to a word, which is mentor. And in the context of the mental health space and private practice for those with mental health issues, mentor versus, again, I'm saying teacher, like the world's accepted that. Nobody has. But the point is, it's a graspable, easy to understand difference. And so, you know, strive to get to that point. First, it has to be an authentic difference. It's got to be compelling. It's got to be valued by the people you're trying to serve. But if you can get it down to a word or a really, really short sentence, you've got something, because people know what a mentor is. People certainly know what a teacher is. And they can say, oh, I do fit that, or I don't fit that. And they can help you figure out. If you can get it down to that point, that's something really special. So I took one of the two. So is there another tangible step, Curran, that you would say for those with intangible services, either in therapy or otherwise, to say, in order to start down the path of figuring out what your differentiation is, what would you say? What kind of advice would you give them?
Say find your value. Find your core moment that you can hold when clients say the world seems dark, where's my light?
Mm-hmm.
That is the point where you begin to allow others to see that maybe there is just a ray of light that they can hold on to, that they can sit in that world where they are able to know that there's a chance that maybe they can learn to shine brighter within who they are.
Yeah. And I want to kind of broaden that even a bit more, because let's go back to what Curran said about, go on Psychology Today. and find the first 25 and try to tell them apart. The person who's looking at those 25 to try to find one has a problem. And that problem can be a very simple problem, or it could be a very complex or complicated problem where, the degree of light that needs to be shined upon it that Curran was talking about might be different, but they have a problem they want to solve. And so even if you're still trying to figure out what's my one word difference, or what's my, short but sort of elegantly described difference, whatever it is you think that's different about you, get it up front. Don't lead with yourself. Lead with the problem you think you solve, because that's all anybody cares about when they're hunting around for you. They're hunting around for a solution to their problem, and you hope that they choose you if they're a good fit. So lead with that. Cool. Curran, did that sound? I didn't
Yes.
misrepresent which. Okay, good.
No,
Excellent.
you did great.
Thank you. Well, Curran, thank you for coming on Practice Care, for getting up really early in the morning. I really appreciate it. You wouldn't know to look at you that it's as early as it is, but I do appreciate you coming on. Once again, my guest today is Curran Otis. He owns Tranquil Waters Consulting in Arlington, Washington. I will put all of Curran's contact information in the show notes. If you are in the therapy space and he caught your attention, he and I were talking before we started recording, and he's got some really nice resources that are specific to your world on the entrepreneur, on the business building side, that I'm sure he'd be happy to point you in those directions so that you could benefit from them too. And then just a couple of other points before we wrap up. If you had an experience on the business side of your practice like Curran has that you think others would benefit hearing about, or if you're someone like me that serves private practice owners and you've got some expertise that you want to share on the business side of practice, of private practice, so that others can benefit from it as well, then we really want you to come on Practice Care. In the show notes to this episode, and for every episode, there's instructions on how to tell us. It's a very short form. Tell us what you're thinking and who you are, so that we can get you scheduled as soon as possible. And finally, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Practice Care on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks very much, and until next time.